Today we are tackling something that I think everyone listening has a pretty complicated relationship with.
Hmm.
I want to start with a question, and not, rhetorical one. I want you to genuinely think about the last time you failed.
Okay.
And I don't mean a humble brag failure where you say you worked too hard. I mean a real face plant. You lost the client, you tanked the exam, you burned dinner for the in-laws. What is that physical sensation in your gut the moment it happens?
It's panic usually, followed immediately by this overwhelming urge to cover it up.
Right, exactly. It's that hide it, bury it, hope nobody noticed reflex. We are, I think, sort of wired to treat failure as this final verdict on our competence.
But the research we're looking at today suggests that's completely the wrong way to look at it.
The core argument here is that struggle isn't the enemy of learning. It's actually the only place where real learning becomes unavoidable.
Yeah, the sources call this concept tuition. And they're not talking about the check you write to a university. They mean the cost of entry for understanding how reality actually works.
The price you have to pay.
Right. The central thesis is pretty aggressive. It says you cannot learn your way out of the first attempt. You have to pay the lab fee.
The lab fee. I like that, although I really hate paying fees. But to prove this isn't just some, motivational poster nonsense, we're going to look at four very different, very specific historical moments.
We're going on a bit of a journey.
We really are. We're going to go from a tropical island where a billionaire was sweating through his shirt to a freezing shed in 19th century Paris, then a corporate boardroom in the 90s, and finally a terrifying crisis in Chicago in 1982.
It sounds like a completely random playlist, doesn't it? Rockets, radium, mainframes, and painkillers.
It really does.
But the connective tissue here is really strong. In every single one of these cases, SpaceX, Marie Curie, IBM, and Johnson & Johnson, the people involved rejected what the sources call the default habit.
Which is to hide or spin the failure.
Exactly. And instead, they chose the learning habit.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, the learning habit isn't just try again. It's a very specific, almost mechanical process of how you treat the data of failure.
It's about interrogation, not shame.
Okay, so let's get into it. We are starting with the rockets. Take us to Omelek Island.
Right. Omelek Island, it's part of the Kwajalein Atoll in the Marshall Islands.
When you say island, I feel like people picture some kind of resort. This is not that.
No, not at all. The source describes it as more a punctuation mark than a destination. It's just this tiny strip of coral near the equator, salt spray everywhere, humidity that just destroys electronics.
And in 2008, this was the home base for SpaceX.
And it was almost the graveyard for SpaceX.
It's so strange to think about that now. We see them landing rockets on ships and launching internet satellites, and it's easy to forget how incredibly close they came to zero.
It was a knife's edge.
So in 2008, what was the scorecard? What was their record?
It was grim. I mean, the aerospace industry runs on confidence and insurance. If you are Boeing or Lockheed, you have decades of history. If you have a failure, it's a glitch. It's a bad day.
Right. You have credibility in the bank.
Exactly. But SpaceX was a startup, and they had attempted 3 launches of their Falcon 1 rocket, and they had 3 failures.
And a rocket failure isn't like a software bug where you can just, patch it and reboot.
No. The research uses this really haunting phrase, failure is metal and flame and silence.
Wow.
When a rocket goes wrong, you don't just lose data, you lose the hardware, it's gone. You're literally looking at wreckage scattered over the Pacific Ocean. And by mid-2008, the industry had, for all intents and purposes, written them off.
The investors had closed their checkbooks.
Totally. The money was gone, the reputation was in tatters. And then comes the third failure in August 2008.
And this is the one that really hurts because they didn't blow up on the pad this time. They actually got up there.
Yeah. They got so close. They cleared the tower. They cleared the atmosphere. Everything looked perfect. And then during stage separation, that moment where the bottom part of the rocket falls away and the top engine is supposed to light up, disaster struck.
This is what they call the recontact issue.
Yes.
So,
And to visualize this, you can imagine you're driving 2 cars on the highway, bumper to bumper. The front car is the second stage of the rocket. The back car is the first stage.
oh, yeah.
If the first stage doesn't slow down fast enough, or if the front car doesn't speed up fast enough, they bump.
A fender bender in space.
Yeah.
Except it's happening at, 5,000 miles per hour?
Exactly. The first stage, which still had this tiny bit of residual thrust, just nudged the second stage engine bell, and that little kick sent the whole rocket into an uncontrollable spin. Game over.
That is just maddening. It's a timing error. It's not that the engine didn't work, it's that they bumped into each other.
And that brings us to what the source calls the hinge moment. They had parts for one last rocket. Elon Musk has admitted this in interviews later. They had money for one more flight. That's it.
So the fourth launch, scheduled for September 28, 2008, was everything.
Everything. If Flight 4 fails, SpaceX is just a footnote in a history book about failed tech startups.
So here's the question I had when I was reading the notes on this.
Yeah.
You've just failed 3 times. The pressure is absolutely crushing. The instinct, that default habit we talked about, would be to overhaul everything.
Oh, for sure.
Tear the rocket apart, redesign the separation system, get new sensors, change it all. Why didn't they do that?
Because that introduces unknowns, and this is where the engineering brilliance comes in. And it's a concept they call engineering triage.
Just re-out.
Yeah. If you change 10 things and the rocket explodes again, you have absolutely no idea which of the 10 things caused it. Or, even worse, maybe you fixed the old problem, but you just created a new one you don't know about.
It's like when I try to fix my computer. I change 5 settings at once, I restart, and now the printer doesn't work, and I have no idea why.
Precisely. You polluted the data set. The SpaceX team had to have the discipline to say, look, the engine works, the guidance system works. The only thing that failed was the timing of the separation. So they focused entirely on that one thing.
So what was the fix? What did they actually do?
It was embarrassingly simple in hindsight.
Really?
They just increased the delay between the first stage burnout and the command to separate. They just waited a few seconds longer.
They added a pause?
They added a pause. They let the first stage drift a little bit further away before they kicked it off. That's it.
But imagine the nerve that takes. You're literally betting the entire company on the idea of just wait a second longer.
And that's the learning habit in action. They performed a failure autopsy. They had to separate the emotional damage, the shame of the crash, the fear of bankruptcy from the cold, hard, technical diagnosis.
They didn't ask, why are we such failures?
No, they asked what specifically collided with what, and they fixed only that.
So, September 28, 2008, Flight 4.
It lifts off. It clears the tower. It gets to stage separation. Everyone in mission control is holding their breath.
I can't even imagine.
The first stage cuts off, a pause, a slightly longer pause, then clear separation. The second stage engine lights, and 9 minutes later, Falcon 1 becomes the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket to ever orbit the Earth.
And just like that, those previous 3 failures aren't failures anymore, are they?
No, they're tuition. They're the cost of the lesson. If they hadn't failed on Flight 3 in that specific way, they wouldn't have known about the residual thrust issue. You can't learn that in a simulation. You have to pay the lab fee to find out.
This brings us to a really practical tool for the listeners because, most of us aren't building rockets, but we are launching projects or campaigns or something.
Right.
You mentioned the failure autopsy. How does a normal person, in a normal job do that?
It's a great mental model. When something blows up in your face, let's say a sales pitch goes terribly wrong, don't just default to, I suck at sales. That's the shame talking.
That's the default habit.
Exactly. You need to act like a crash investigator. Sit down with a piece of paper and write out, I expected X, Y happened instead. Why?
So I expected the client to say yes. They said the price was too high. Why?
And then you go deeper. Was the price actually too high, or did I fail to communicate the value properly? Then you design a very small, specific test. Next time I will present the value proposition before I even mention the price. You change one variable. That's it.
So you're saying don't change your whole personality, don't quit your job.
Yeah.
Just change the timing of one slide in your deck.
Isolate the variable. That's how you turn a car crash into useful data.
I love that. Okay, so that's the high-speed, high-tech, very explosive version of struggle. But I want to shift gears completely. We're going to leave the tropical island and the 21st century.
Where are we going now?
We are going to Paris, to the late 1890s. And we are going to talk about a very, very different kind of lab.
We are going to the shed.
And let's be really clear, this isn't some kind of, charming backyard studio.
No, this was an abandoned dissecting room from the School of Physics. The source paints a pretty miserable picture. It had a glass roof that leaked rain constantly. It had a dirt floor.
A dirt floor.
A dirt floor. In the summer, it was a greenhouse, boiling hot, suffocating. In the winter, it was freezing cold, and there was no ventilation for all the toxic fumes she was working with.
So basically, a place that OSHA would shut down in about 5 minutes today.
Oh, immediately. No question. And this is where Marie Curie and her husband Pierre did the work that won them not 1, but 2 Nobel Prizes.
I think we have this really sanitized view of science history. We picture clean white coats and shiny beakers, but the reality of discovering radium was, well, it sounds more like heavy industry.
It was heavy labor. Their hypothesis was that pitchblende, this black, tarry ore, was more radioactive than pure uranium, which meant there had to be a new element hiding inside it.
But it was there in such tiny, tiny amounts.
Infinitesimal amounts. So they had to process tons of this ore to find it.
Literally tons of rock.
Yes, they would get these huge shipments of industrial waste ore. And Marie Curie describes her days as iron rod days. She was essentially a factory worker. She would stand over these massive cast iron cauldrons of boiling chemicals, stirring them with a heavy iron rod almost as big as she was for hours and hours at a time.
That sounds absolutely exhausting. I mean, physically brutal.
She wrote in her diary about being broken with fatigue, but then she had to switch modes completely. Because once you boil all this stuff down, you have to do fractional crystallization. And that requires absolute stillness, perfect cleanliness, and incredible precision.
In a shed with a dirt floor and a leaky roof.
Exactly. So she's oscillating between this brute force manual labor and the most delicate chemistry imaginable. Struggle wasn't an event for her, like a rocket launch. It was the constant environment. And this went on for 3 years.
3 years of that. And at the end of it, what did they have to show for it?
From tons of raw ore, they managed to isolate 1/10 of a gram of radium chloride.
1/10 of a gram. That is a speck. That is like a grain of sand.
But it was enough. It was enough to determine the atomic weight. It was enough to prove that it existed.
Here is the part of the story that I found really tough to wrap my head around. Despite the toxic fumes, the freezing cold, the back-breaking labor, she later called these the best and happiest years of her life.
It's a paradox, isn't it?
It is. Is that just nostalgia, or is there something else going on?
I don't think it's nostalgia. I think it's the realization that the constraint forced the mastery. This is what the source calls the system thinking aspect of struggle.
What do you mean by that?
If Curie had been in a state-of-the-art lab with perfect assistance and unlimited funding, she might have been sloppier. She might have taken shortcuts.
Because the environment was easy, it wouldn't have demanded so much from her.
Exactly. When the system hates you, when dust from the dirt floor is constantly trying to ruin your sample, you are forced to develop a level of rigorous discipline that most people never, ever achieve. You have to earn the signal.
Earn the signal. I like that. Meaning the data doesn't just show up on a screen for you. You have to physically drag it out of all the noise and the mess.
Right. And this applies to anyone listening who feels like they're stuck in the grind phase of their work. Maybe you aren't discovering new elements. Maybe you're just entering data or practicing scales on a piano or writing code that nobody sees.
The iron rod days.
Yes. The lesson from Curie is that not all struggle is cinematic. It's not all explosions and rocket launches. Sometimes struggle is just doing the boring, hard thing with absolute integrity day after day after day until it becomes knowledge.
That leads to the second tactical tool from our source, the pitchblende concept.
This is for when you're procrastinating on the boring but necessary stuff. We all want the breakthrough, right? But we hate the prep work.
Guilty.
The advice here is to name your pitchblende. Identify that one tedious, monotonous task you are avoiding. Maybe it's cleaning your CRM data. Maybe it's doing your physical therapy exercises.
And then what? Do I have to do it for 3 years straight?
No, thankfully not. The tactic is to just commit to 10 reps. Just say, today I'm going to process 10 lines of data, or I'm going to make 10 cold calls. That's it. Treat the monotony itself as the teacher. The struggle of the boredom is what builds the mental callus you need for the real breakthrough.
So mastery isn't found, it's extracted.
It's extracted from the mess, just like the radium.
Okay, let's leave the shed. We are jumping forward about 100 years. We're trading the dirt floor for plush carpeting, but the smell of panic is just as strong. It's 1993, and we are looking at IBM.
Big Blue, the icon of American business, the undisputed king of computing for decades.
And in 1993, Big Blue was bleeding out. The source says they were losing over $8 billion.
$8.1 billion to be exact. It was, at the time, one of the largest corporate losses in history. The company was, by all appearances, dying.
And why was that? What was happening?
Well, the whole tech world was moving to personal computers and client-server setups, and IBM was still stuck selling these massive, expensive mainframes. They were a dinosaur, and the meteor was coming.
And the sharks were circling, the experts, the Wall Street analysts, they all had the same solution, right? Break it up.
That was the consensus, yeah. The logic was IBM is too big and slow to succeed. So you split it into a dozen baby IBMs, a printer company, a software company, a hardware company. Save the parts, kill the beast.
Into this absolute mess steps. Lou Gerstner. Now, Gerstner wasn't a computer guy. He was a cookie and credit card guy. He came from RJR Nabisco and American Express.
A total outsider, which, as it turns out, was probably critical.
So he arrives, and everyone is screaming for a vision. The employees want a vision. The press wants a vision. Where are we going, Lou? What's the grand plan? And he gives this famous, almost grumpy response.
The last thing IBM needs right now is a vision.
Which is such a bizarre thing for a new CEO to say. I mean, isn't that their whole job? To have a vision?
Usually, yes. But Gerstner realized something profound. A vision is just a dream if you can't even execute the basics. He looked at IBM and saw that the problem wasn't that they didn't have smart ideas. The problem was they couldn't tie their own shoelaces without tripping over them.
And this brings us to the third type of struggle we're examining, cultural struggle.
IBM was a collection of silos, and we use that word a lot in business, but let's define what it actually meant there. The different divisions, hardware, software, sales, services, they hated each other. They competed with each other far more than they competed with Oracle or Microsoft or anyone else.
But why? Was everyone just a jerk?
No. And this is the absolute key insight. It was the incentives, it was the pay structure. If I run the hardware division, my bonus is tied strictly to how much hardware I sell. Full stop.
Okay.
So if the software division needs my help to close a big deal, but it doesn't directly help my specific numbers, I'm not going to help them. In fact, I might even sabotage them so my division looks better by comparison at the end of the quarter.
So the customer calls up and says, hey, I need a complete solution. And IBM basically says, well, I can sell you this box, but you have to talk to Steve down the hall for the cord, and he's not picking up his phone today.
That's a perfect analogy. The customer was paying a silo tax. They had to integrate all of IBM's different products themselves. Gerstner realized that your strategy is completely irrelevant if your culture is broken.
So what did he do? Did he just order a bunch of trust falls and team-building exercises?
Oh, he went for the wallet. He went straight for the incentives. This is the operational part of the struggle. He changed the entire compensation plan for the top executives. He said, effectively, I don't care how well your individual division does. If IBM as a whole loses money, nobody gets a bonus.
Wow. So he basically forced them all into the same lifeboat, sink or swim together.
He socialized the risk. And suddenly, if the software guy is failing, the hardware guy has a direct financial reason to go help him. He broke the silos by changing the incentives.
But that must have caused a massive, massive revolt inside the company.
It did. People left. People were furious. That's the struggle. Changing a culture is a violent act in a way. You are breaking an old social contract that's existed for decades. But Gerstner knew that if he didn't endure that struggle, if he didn't force that painful learning loop, the company was dead anyway.
The source has this great line that really stuck with me. If you don't change the culture will change your strategy into a rumor.
It's so true, isn't it? You can have the best, most brilliant strategy in the world, but if your people are paid to ignore it, it's just a rumor. It's just a poster on a wall.
So the tactical advice here for our listeners, especially if you're a manager, audit the incentives.
Right. If you're frustrated with your team, or even your kids for that matter, stop yelling and look at the math of the situation. What behavior is actually being rewarded and not just what you're asking for?
Can you give an example?
Sure. If you tell your team we need to innovate and take risks, but you punish anyone whose project fails, you are actually incentivizing playing it safe.
You're paying for safety while asking for risk. The math doesn't add up.
Exactly. You have to align the reward with the behavior you actually want, not the behavior you say you want.
Okay, we have one last story. And this one is, I think, the heaviest of the bunch. We've done rockets, radium, and boardrooms. Now we're going to a pharmacy shelf in Chicago. The year is 1982.
The Tylenol crisis.
For anyone who's too young to remember, this was a moment of genuine widespread terror. People in the Chicago area started collapsing and dying suddenly, and the police eventually linked it to one thing: extra-strength Tylenol capsules.
Someone had put cyanide in them. Someone, and to this day we still don't know who, had taken bottles off the store shelves, filled the capsules with cyanide, and then put them back.
It is every company's absolute worst nightmare. Because it's not a manufacturing defect, it's not your fault in a direct technical sense, it's an external attack.
And the panic was total. You have to remember, Tylenol was Johnson & Johnson's cash cow. It had something like 37% of the market. It was as trusted as Coca-Cola. And suddenly, the news is screaming, Tylenol will kill you.
So put us in the room with the CEO at the time, James Burke.
Yeah.
What's the default habit in a corporate crisis like this? What does the playbook say to do?
The default playbook is deny, deflect, and delay. The lawyers usually come in and say, don't admit anything. It's a local police matter in Chicago. Our factories are clean. Keep selling the product in the rest of the country.
Because if you recall everything, you lose hundreds of millions of dollars and you might kill the brand forever.
And you risk validating the fear. If you pull the product, you're essentially admitting that it's dangerous. But Burke and J&J didn't do the default thing. They looked at their company Credo, which is their mission statement that says their first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients who use their products.
Right, but a lot of companies have those mission statements hanging on a plaque in the lobby that nobody ever reads.
Correct. But here is the critical insight from the source. Values aren't what you say in calm weather. They are what you pay for in a storm. In 1982, that credo became a bill, and J&J had to decide if they were actually going to pay it.
Oh, what did they do?
They went nuclear. They issued a nationwide recall, 31 million bottles of Tylenol. They didn't know if the poison was only in Chicago, but they couldn't be 100% sure, so they cleared every single shelf in America.
The cost of that must have been staggering.
About $100 million in 1982 money, plus the potential death of their biggest brand. Marketing experts at the time universally said Tylenol was done. You can't recover from death in a bottle.
But they did recover.
They didn't just recover, they rebounded to be stronger than before. Because by recalling everything immediately, they sent an unmistakable signal to the public. We care about your safety more than we care about our money. And that bought them a lifetime of trust.
And it also led to a physical change in the product itself.
Yes. This is why we have tamper-evident packaging today. That foil seal you have to peel off your vitamins, that plastic ring around the cap. That exists because J&J chose to struggle through a complete product redesign rather than just pretend the problem didn't exist.
They leaned into the failure and used it to make everyone safer.
They established what we can call the 24-hour rule for harm.
And that's the final tactical tool for us.
Right. If you discover a problem in your work that causes harm, whether it's a physical safety issue, a data breach, or a major error that costs a client money, you have 24 hours to own it completely. Total transparency. The pain of the confession is sharp, but it heals. The pain of a cover-up is a slow rot that never goes away.
And we can apply that tamper seal concept to our own work, too.
Definitely. Ask yourself, where am I vulnerable? If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, does this whole project die? If this one critical file gets deleted, do we lose the client? Build the safeguards now. Don't wait for the cyanide.
It's incredible when you line them all up. You see the pattern so clearly across all four of these stories. You have SpaceX paying the tuition of 3 exploded rockets to learn how to get to orbit.
You have Marie Curie paying the tuition of 3 years in a miserable shed to learn chemistry and discover an element.
You have IBM paying the tuition of an internal civil war to learn how to build a healthy culture.
And you have J&J paying a huge financial tuition to learn what it actually means to earn public trust.
The common thread is that they didn't try to get a discount on the price of the lesson. They paid the full fare.
And that brings us back to the core idea. You cannot learn your way out of the first attempt. Struggle is the data stream. If you turn it off because it's uncomfortable or embarrassing, you stop learning.
So, for everyone listening, if you are in the middle of a disaster right now, if your rocket just exploded on the launch pad, or you feel like you're stuck in the shed doing the same boring work over and over.
Congratulations, you're in class.
The tuition is due. The only question is, are you going to pay it and get the lesson, or are you going to drop out?
That's the choice.
I think we'll leave it there. A massive thank you for walking us through the wreckage today. This was fascinating.
Oh, always a pleasure.
And to you, the listener, next time you screw up, don't hide it.
What?
Dissect it. Because if it didn't cost you something, it probably didn't teach you anything.